Wow. This is crazy. The cosmos. Big, open void spaces full of all kinds of objects, gases, and anything in between. Maybe even alien friends, who knows? But I want you to imagine for a second. Take yourself back before there was technology, education, maybe cities, lights. Imagine you're sitting around a campfire late at night. So all you can pretty much see is the friends next to you and your campfire. Now imagine you look up in the stars without knowing what science is or what anything is. What were you probably thinking? Well, I guarantee one thing that I would be thinking is, what is that? What are the cosmos? Today, we're going to learn a little bit about the cosmos. Let's dive in. So, you are looking up at the stars and you are questioning what's up there in the cosmos. Well, it's not like that now, right? You can pretty much go outside any time of the night and be able to at least understand what the sun is, or what the moon is, or understand what stars are. How did we get all of that science and data? Well, it took a lot of very intelligent people and a lot of time to develop technologies to get us to this point. And this video is a lot about that. First thing we're going to talk about is the history of exploration and how that exploration has drove our knowledge of space into the future. We're also going to talk a little bit about some different telescope types throughout the years, including Galileo's start. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about eclipses, specifically the total solar eclipse that's happening this year on April 8th. So get ready, because it's going to be a really good time. We're going to talk a lot about safety while viewing total solar eclipses. That's extremely important. So, without further ado, join me in the cosmos. Trinity, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Garrett. How are you?
I'm pretty awesome.
Cool.
Hey, the viewers want to know a little bit about some of the history of space travel and a little bit about telescopes. Can you teach them a little bit about that?
I can try.
Okay, let's try.
So the earliest known telescopic observations date back to the 13th century with the invention of something called eyeglasses. You might have heard of them. But then in the early 17th century, there was a Dutch spectacle maker, Hans Lippershey, that is credited with inventing the first refracting telescope, which consists of a convex objective lens and a concave eyepiece lens. But lenses, due to their tendency to bend different wavelengths of light differently, made distant images blurry and discolored. And this guy named Galileo Galilei made significant improvements to the design, like using mirrors instead of lenses, and used his telescope to make groundbreaking astronomical observations, like the moons of Jupiter and the phases of Venus.
That's cool.
And then in 1668, Isaac Newton invented the first practical reflecting telescope, which used a curved mirror to gather and focus light instead of lenses, which refract light. Reflecting telescopes offered several advantages over refracting telescopes, like reduced chromatic aberrations, or that blurriness I mentioned, and larger aperture or diameter sizes, which allow the lens to collect more light and make things look clearer. So after these improvements, it wasn't long before an even more advanced model, the Cassegrain telescope, was one of the used a parabolic primary mirror that reflected onto a hyperbolic secondary mirror, which became the standard for all telescopes even today.
Wow, that is a lot of time for telescopes to really advance their technology. Does that mean that we can see really far from Earth with telescopes?
Well, during the 18th and 19th centuries, the advancements improved the quality and performance of refracting telescopes. But even with these advancements, the Earth's atmosphere was still blocking telescopes from making extremely distant and clear observations from Earth's surface. The only way to make more progress was to send telescopes into orbit. So the 20th century saw the development of increasingly sophisticated telescopes like radio telescopes, infrared telescopes, and space telescopes. Today, telescopes continue to push the boundaries of our understanding of the universe, revealing distant galaxies and exoplanets.
Cool.
Through centuries of innovation and discovery, telescopes have transformed our view of the cosmos, allowing us to explore the depths of space. So following the centuries of direct observation, physical space exploration started during World War II, with Wernher von Braun's V-2 military rocket being the first man-made object to pass through the atmosphere in 1946.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, so this provided the very first picture of Earth from space, actually. And then it wasn't until 1957 when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite, marking the beginning of the space age. Then in 1961, the Soviet cosmonaut becomes the first human to fully orbit Earth. And then in 1969, we all know that American astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin land on the moon during the Apollo 11 mission. And in 1975, the Apollo-Soyuz test project was the first project where the American Apollo crew joined the Soviet Soyuz spacecraft, which symbolized the end of the space race, as the American and Soviet spacecraft docked together and went together through orbit. Cool. And then in 1998, the ISS began construction, and then in 2011, the Space Shuttle program concluded the final flight of Atlantis, which marked the end of NASA's reliance on the shuttle for human spaceflight. And it wasn't until 2021 where the SpaceX's Crew Dragon spacecraft successfully transported more astronauts to the ISS, which made the first crewed mission into the space since the end of the Space Shuttle program.
Wow. That's a lot of awesome history in space. It makes you think, that's probably why we've come so far in all the technologies. So let's explore a little bit more things. But for now, Trinity, thank you for sharing all the cool history, and you know a lot. You know a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, I do live here. So.
Well, bye, guys. We'll see you soon. So Trinity talked to you a little bit about some of the different kinds of telescopes that we've had throughout the years, including the technology and how it changed over time. But what I'm going to show you is our telescope here that we have at the museum, show you a little bit about telescope anatomy, and maybe you'll understand a little bit more about how it works. So the first part is going to be the front area here. The sun's kind of shining towards it, so I just wanted to quickly show. You can maybe see the mirror inside of there, and that's what's helping this specific telescope be able to change all of the different mirrors and which way it's directing the light that goes into your eye here. So this piece located right here at the front would be where you would look. That is also called the eyepiece, whereas this would be called the objective lens. So light travels through, bounces off several different mirrors inside of here and reflects it back into your eye. This piece right here is actually called your finder scope. So you can actually use this. It has a very small magnification on it. Sometimes they are only there to kind of give you a general understanding of where something is. They're never going to be totally accurate when finding something. But let's say, for instance, you saw something in the sky that you really wanted to look at. The first thing you would need to do, of course, is define your true north so that you could figure out where exactly this star, planet, nebula, whatever you were looking at is located. What you would do is use this piece right here first. This piece is going to be, like I said, low magnification so that you can get a general idea of where something's at. So let's say I wanted to look at the North Star or perhaps even the sun, as long as I had good proper solar filter, which I don't have on this specific telescope. I would actually use this piece right here on the top to be able to locate that first. What that does again is give me somewhat in the general vicinity so that I can switch over to my eyepiece and be able to use the next steps. So the mount itself, you may be curious, why and how can it move so many different directions? Well, that mount is actually called an equatorial mount. You'll notice it right here on the base, right before we get to our tripod here. That piece there is really amazing. Equatorial mounts are a pretty common mount and maybe the most common because of how easy it is to be able to use different orbits and understanding that, of course, everything in space is moving constantly. So having an equatorial mount and having these different knobs to be able to switch around is extremely important. So that if I found something, I can stay on track using these knobs in either direction to be able to make sure that I can stay on to that specific object that I may be wanting to observe. So a lot of really cool telescopes out there. Again, this one is a pretty budget option for people wanting to get into the observing the night skies or even observing the sun. Again, make sure you always have the proper equipment for different kinds of things, including especially looking at the sun. So if you guys are going to be using these for the Total Solar Eclipse this year on April 8th, please, please, please be sure to be using proper solar filters for the safety of not only your telescope, but also for your eyes. So thank you very much, and we'll talk to you in a second. According to the National Safety Council and NASA's outlines do's and don'ts of viewing the eclipse, The rules are as follows. Do not look directly at the sun. Use special solar filters such as eclipse glasses or handheld solar viewers to view the eclipse. Do not use homemade filters or ordinary sunglasses, even very dark sunglasses. Use special solar filters to view the eclipse. Read and follow filter instructions. Be sure to follow and supervise children. Inspect your solar filter before use. If it is scratched or damaged, discard the filter. Hey everybody, so we're out here, we're going to teach you guys a little bit about several different types of eclipses. Specifically, we're going to focus on the solar eclipse as well as the lunar eclipses. So with us we have Kaylee, she is representing the planet Earth, I'm representing the moon, and Miss Maria will be representing the sun. So the first eclipse that we're going to be focusing on again is the solar eclipses. There's two that we're going to be looking at totally right now is, of course, the total eclipse. Where I'm standing right now is a total eclipse. The sun's rays are hitting and casting a shadow and pinpointing directly on the planet Earth. Now, if I wanted to represent a partial solar eclipse, what I'm going to do in representation of that is to stand a little bit more forward and a little bit more this way. What that means is that we are kind of moving away out of the sun's shadow to where it's not as much of a pinpoint, but still partially eclipsing the Earth. Next, we're gonna come on over. So the year is going by, la 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 la, and I'm gonna come over, and now we have come into the lunar eclipse phase. The lunar eclipse phase just means that the moon is on the other side of the Earth during the eclipse. So the lunar eclipses are also in both partial and a total eclipse. In this position that I'm currently in would be considered to be the, of course, partial eclipse because it is partially, the Earth is partially casting a shadow from, the sun is partially casting a shadow from the Earth to the moon, and from where we're located, you can partially see the eclipse. Now, if we move closer in this direction, you'll see I'm in perfect alignment with both the sun and the Earth, so that the Earth's shadow casts perfectly against the moon, sometimes giving it a red hue, considering that maybe as like a blood moon. Now, if I go back in this direction, we're gonna also be in, again, a partial eclipse. So we have two different eclipses throughout a year for the lunar eclipses, and we're coming back over and bingo. Now I'm in another partial eclipse just on the other side of the orbit. And that's all of our eclipses. Well, you guys learned a lot today. Hope you had a good time hanging out with us here at the museum. In review, let's kind of think a little bit more about what we've learned today, because it's a lot, right? So first off, we started off with human history and how we are very intelligent animals. We're very curious about what's out there in space, and it took a lot of time for us to figure those things out. So we went over a little bit of that history. We also talked a little bit about telescopes, both their anatomy, the technology that we're using in modern times, as well as past telescopes that we've used a long time ago to get us to the point that we're currently at. And finally, we talked a little bit about eclipses, right? So we talked about both solar, we talked about lunar, but specifically we talked a lot about the total solar eclipse that's happening this year on April 8th. Because that's happening this year, we really highly recommend everybody try to go see that in a really cool spot called the Path of Totality. So it'll be a good time. Be sure to, again, really remember these rules and be very well aware that afterwards, there's still gonna be a lot of cool things. The partial eclipse will happen for several hours, so you can hang out, take a look at that. Traffic's gonna be kind of crazy, so also put that into some of your planning for the eclipse itself. And finally, what's the museum going to be doing? Because we're doing some pretty cool stuff. So we talked a little bit about CATE 2024 and our role in that, which is a NASA organized program. And that program spans 35 different teams over the entire nation. We're Site 5, as we said before. So please stay tuned for that. We're going to be doing a live stream of the eclipse itself. And we're going to be posting photos, different things of that nature, and keeping you guys up to date on our project with that. Otherwise, we've come to the conclusion, we've had a great time, so come back and see us, and please be very, very safe when you guys are headed out to the eclipse. Have a good one. Bye-bye.